Respected elders and dear friends, I feel honored today to be present in front of you, especially this August gathering, because I am not used to talking in front of a scholarly audience. I, being a social worker, being a pracharak since last quarter century, and also being a political worker for last 13-14 years, it is very rarely I get such occasions. And it is not only an occasion today for me, it is also a challenge for me also. Because talking in a general platform, talking in a public platform, and talking in front of you who are well versed in that subject, it is always not only an opportunity, I also feel it's a challenge also. And I feel honored to be present in front of you today. I thank Dr. Shyam Prasad Mukherjee Research Foundation in general and Dr. Anirban Ganguly in particular for giving me this opportunity to address you all in my own backyard. I stay here only, so this is my backyard. So today, the discussion around the country, the discussion around the globe, it is being pictured as, it is being narrated as, it is centered around the controversy called Citizenship Amendment Act. Is it really a controversy or is it a natural phenomena? That will let us discuss over a period of next 60 minutes or so on. The narrative that is being forced on the country, the narrative that is being forced on the intellect of this country, the narrative that is being forced on the general mindset of this country, that may look a little controversial because of the kind of narrative that has been set upon for the last 45 days. But that controversial narrative that has been imposed on this country through the vested interest, whatever it is, along with the platforms they have naturally because of their creativity and because of their outreach, it looks like the whole country is looking at this Citizenship Amendment Act in a particular way. They have been successful in doing like this. But truth will always be far, it is not just what looks to you is truth. You have to look beyond what you see to sense the truth also. So when you tell the whole country, because these are the kind of words that are being used now, the country is in shock because of a small incident today in front of JMU, which we too condemn. But which country is in shock? Because 99.9% of the country doesn't even know that incident to be in shock. That act is condemnable. That act is not acceptable. We will condemn it. The law will take its own course. But terming it as the country is in shock due to a small incident where lots of things are happening across the country which are unreported. Just a few days back, 15 days back, there was a brutal murder of 7 tribals, not 7 Brahmins, not 7 RSS people, not 7 Jats, not 7 Gurjars, nothing. It was 7 tribals by the agitators of Patalgadi Andolan in a village in the district of Chaibasa. Till today, I am telling till today, a single sentence of that incident hasn't come in the front page of the newspapers of Delhi. It might have appeared in Jharkhand, it might have appeared in Bihar, it might have appeared in Chhattisgarh, but the capital of this country, an incident happens where 9 tribals are killed because of a altercation between them, pro-Patalgadi movement and anti-Patalgadi movement, and there is a violence there. The pro-Patalgadi movement people take them to a forest and brutally kill them. That doesn't reflect at all. And one small incident here where a person is injured, and though the incident is condemnable, it becomes something like the country is in shock. This is the heading that is being carried by 2 or 3 media. I am quoting from the just now I said the country is in shock. The same kind of narrative is used for the CAA also. The whole country is protesting, the whole country is burning, the whole country is against it. How much of it? How many universities are there in our country? And how many universities have little kind of disturbance? When we tell JNU is under problem, more than 5,000 people are, many of you know the fact practically. More than 5,000 people are attending the classes where few hundreds are on the streets. And when few hundreds are on the street, in how many universities they are on the street, I can name them. And it doesn't go beyond my fingers also. It doesn't move beyond my fingers also. Yes, there is disturbance, but how to set the narrative, that is being done nowadays. And yes, there are some agitations. We accept in democracy, agitations are always allowed. Many people come to me also. Many people come to people who are in power also. आप क्या इतना powerful है आपका military, इतना powerful है आपका police? Why don't you remove those ladies from Shahina Bagan? Because fundamentally we differ in removing them from that spot. Because in democracy it should be allowed. It should be allowed when they are protesting there peacefully. Their intentions may be something else. And when they are protesting there peacefully, democracy allows them to protest, because we have also protested for a long time. In various instances, we have also protected. So democracy needs protest. Democracy needs resistance. Democracy needs discussion. Democracy needs dialogue. Democracy needs argument, but not beyond a point. Not beyond a point. What is that point? A gentle society will decide what is that point. It is not the law that will decide what is that point. A gentle society, a cultured society will decide what is that point. But the Citizenship Amendment Act, as far as my knowledge goes, my little knowledge goes, I think it is the most misrepresented thing, misrepresented administrative exercise, I think, in the last 70 years. In the last 70 years. Today we will discuss a little bit about it. Any society, any individual, any country, for the last 200 years, a man, a society and a country have always been described by the Western world as economic entities. Economy rules the roost. That has been the theory. But if you go deep inside a man, a human being, if you go deep inside a society, if you go deep inside a history of a nation, never economy was the fundamental building block of a person or a society or a culture or a nation. But beyond economic, it is a necessity. I am not telling economics is an unnecessary thing, but economics is not everything. What that runs deep inside a person, deep inside a society, deep inside a culture, deep inside a nation, it is the identity. When I tell Anirban Ganguly, what is that Ganguly? It is an identity. Anirban is a name and Ganguly is the identity. When I tell Narendra Modi, what is Modi? It is an identity. That identity may be a culture, it may be a caste, it may be a gotra, it may be a village, it may be family, whatever it is an identity. And there is nothing wrong in it. When it doesn't harm a second person, there is nothing harm in I having my identity. A human being always eagerly he strives for an identity. When that identity is under disturbance, there is a protest. When that identity is under question, there is a movement. When that identity is under problem, then certain exercises start happening. This identity, when it is inclusive, it gets converted itself into a culture. When it becomes exclusive, then it is called under various names, right from communal to various other words you can term it, when it becomes exclusive. Indian society, from times immemorial, it always strived very hard for finding identity. But that identity, because of our ancestors, when it gave way to inclusivity, it got converted itself into culture. Then that culture, over a period of last 4,000 years, it has allowed the last Jew who was driven out of Israel from those lands to settle here for 2,000 long years. And in when 1948, the country of Israel gave a clarion call, because they needed population also. Not only culture, not only religion, not only way of worship, they wanted numbers also. So in 1948, they were in dire need of numbers. When they wanted numbers, they gave a clarion call across the globe to come back. They arranged flight. They gave many things there to settle also, land, money, everything they promised. It was only one single group from across the globe which didn't want to return. That group was from India, from Ernakulam. The group of Israelis, they didn't want to get back there. Why? It is because of the inclusive culture that we followed over a period of last thousands of years. Not in some pocket or not in some particular period of time, not like that. But times immemorial, we have been doing it. The Parsis, the Muslims, the Christians, everybody have tasted that sweetness of the inclusive culture that is there in this country. So when there was partition along the religious lines, partition was not because of personal gains. Partition was not because of some language region. Partition was not because of some political compulsion. Partition was not because of some individual region. Partition, it is beyond doubt, and there is no point in discussing it. It was because of the two nations theory based on religion, Hindus and Muslims. Hindus and Muslims. And Pakistan opted for a Muslim Islamic country, and India by culture opted for a secular country. Not by the word secular, but by our practice, but because of our culture, but because of our upbringing, we opted for a secular country. That word was not there in the constitution. That was not the narrative at that point of time. But later date, you can substitute that word for secular. Not the kind of pseudo-secular that it is now there. In true sense, it is the secular world which we wanted. So, the Muslims and the Christians who were there here, they were welcomed with open arms here. They were welcomed with open arms here, and they were assured that you can have a decent living in this country. You can have a decent living in this country. And after 72, 73 years, after 1947, after 73 years, today if you look back, you can feel proud that whatever the assurance indirectly we had given to a society, which was small in number then, to a faith, which was small in number then, to a practice which was small in the number then, what never persecuted here because they were from a particular community, or because they were from a particular faith, or because they practiced a kind of worship, they were never persecuted here. They were never persecuted here. To be very straight, our first education minister was a Muslim. We had two captains of hockey team who were Muslim. We had two captains across over a period of last 60 years. One was Pataudi and the another was Muhammad Azharuddin, who was the captain of the most fondly accepted sports in our country, that is cricket. We had Abdul Kalam Azad. We had Hamid Ansari. We had everything. We had Supreme Court judges. We had High Court Chief Justices in this country. Wherever possible, wherever they had the capacity, they rose to the highest level in this country without anybody even raising the eyebrows also. Ye kya Abdul Kalam president ban raha hai? Koi nahi pucha. Nobody uttered a single word. Nobody raised even a small eyebrows also on that. They just became, it was a very natural phenomenon. Somebody coming and residing in front, in the next door neighbor, it was a very natural exercise. Nobody thought about it. Nobody worried about it. But what was the case in other part of the country, which was partition? The West and the East Pakistan then, and the Pakistan and the Bangladesh now. We signed an agreement with Pakistan in 1915. The Nehru-Liaquat Ali Khan Pact, it told that the right to life, dignity of life, the right to living. There was not a word called right, but everything was assured by then because of that agreement. It was not only some money, it was not only some living, it was also the dignity of life, right to practice the way of worship, and the right to live according to their belief. The agreement between Nehru and Liaquat Ali Khan in 1950, it was based on the same fact that the minorities in both the countries, they should have the dignity of life in their respective areas of living. But after 70 years, after 73 years, what is the condition of Hindus in Pakistan? What is the condition of Hindus in Bangladesh? What is the condition of Buddhists in Pakistan? What is the condition of Buddhists in here? What is the condition of Buddhists in Afghanistan? The Bamiyan Buddha showed it. What is the condition of Buddhists in Afghanistan? Why were they persecuted? Not because they were some anti-national elements, no. Why they were persecuted? Not because they were anti-social elements, no. Why they were persecuted? Not because they were poor, no. Why they were persecuted? Because they worshipped in a different way. Why they were persecuted? Not because they dressed badly, no. They were persecuted because they worshipped in a different way, they followed faith in a different way, so they were persecuted. For how many years? Not 1 or 2 years. For 70 long years they were persecuted. What was the result? From 23 to 24%. Now the Hindus are down to 2.7% in Pakistan itself. On the other side of the spectrum, from single digit, now the Muslims are in double digit in India. And in many pockets, they are the majority. In a state like Kerala, they are in a process of becoming the majority. In some districts of India, they are in a majority. But when it became naturally, there was no resistance. Though there was a word of caution for Malabar, there was not serious movement against Malabar. There was a word of caution for Malabar. There was a word of caution for Mevas region. There was a word of caution for Meerut. There was a word of caution for Bengal, in some pockets of Bengal, but there was no resistance to it, because there the numbers were increasing gradually, normally, or beyond a certain limit. But the case of Bengal and case of Assam, over a period of last 30-40 years, it is not a natural phenomenon. It is not a natural phenomenon. Both the kinds of people entered Bengal, and both the kind of people they entered Assam also. One persecuted, the other driven from there because of for a demographic change of the particular regions of our country. Particular regions of our country. If you go to Dhubri, if you go to Malda, if you go to Muzaffarpur, you can easily sense that what is happening there is not natural. It is not happening by birth. It is not happening because over a period of time. Over a period of time, even in my locality also, the number of Muslims may increase. It may increase. But what is happening in Malda, what is happening in Muzaffarpur, what is happening in some regions of Jharkhand, what has happened in Dhubri, what has happened in more than 12 districts of Assam is not a natural phenomenon. When it is not a natural phenomenon, a resistance grows there. Sometimes that resistance may be dormant. Sometimes the resistance may be silent, but over a period of time, the resistance, it picks up, and sometimes it becomes an administrative exercise also. The Citizenship Amendment Act is an answer to that anxiety of a society, that anxiety of a system, that anxiety of a government, that anxiety of a country, where there is a definite demographic change in particular areas of the country because of some kind of development that are happening in our neighbor. That is happening in our neighbor. There are two phases to this picture. That is one, the religious persecution that is happening there. The religious persecution happening there, out of 6, the 4 are Indian origin religions. The Indian subcontinent origin religions. So whenever there is a religious persecution, where they have to go? India is their natural land. They come here for worship. From across the globe, the Buddhists come here to Bodh Gaya. From across the globe, the Hindus come here. From across the globe, Jains come here, and they don't go outwards. There may be big Buddhas, world record wala Buddhas in China. There may be world record height Buddha in Thailand. But people don't go to Thailand to practice Buddhism. They go to Thailand to practice Vipassana, but they don't go to look at Buddha there. They go out of curiosity, not out of reverence. ये कितना बड़ा है 182 मीटर, तो 182 मीटर्स कितना बड़ा है देखने के लिए जाते हैं, बुद्ध के चेहरा देखने के लिए नहीं जाते हैं. If they want to look at Buddha, they will come to Bodh Gaya, they will come to Kushinagar, they will come to Siddhartha Nagar, they will come here because it is the place of origin of those religions. When they were persecuted in some area, it was but natural for them to come to this country. Because if the Jews are persecuted, they have to go because their identity is centered around Israel. Their economy may be centered in US, their economy may be centered in Germany, but their identity is centered in Israel. They are well versed in US. They control 8 of the 10 big banks. But their identity is not there in United States. Their identity is in Israel. So whenever they are under threat, they don't move to US. If they are under threat, they come over to here. Whenever you are under threat, you ran to even at not only at very in a small age, even after some 10 years, 15 years also, we run towards mother. We run towards mother. So this is the kind of mentality. So whenever there was a persecution, people started coming to India. There was a natural process here. Indian society accepted it because where they had to go? There were people who were having names like us only. There were people who were worshipping gods like us. There were people who were reciting verses like us, though in a different slang. Pronunciation might have been different, but the words were the same. So people accepted them. Somewhere there had to be a system where legally they were to be accepted also. Citizenship Amendment Act is doing nothing beyond that point of giving them a legal status of residence here. By that legal status, Indian government is according a dignity of life, that's all. We are not giving them a piece of land here. We are not giving them any allowance here. We are not providing them any election tickets from some parties here. We are not giving them some guarantee of employment here. Nothing. And because of this law, to a particular section of the society who had to come to India because of the bad conditions prevailing there, because of their way of worship, we provided a dignity of life. That's all. You are a citizen of this country. You are a citizen of this country. The person who have been persecuted and came to here, they are living here for 30, 40 long years. Not that they have come in 2014. There is a limit now. Before 2014, you will be accepted. But it doesn't limited that you came only in 2013-14. They came in 1971 also. They came in 1948 also. They came in 1951 also. Even till today, I know many of them by person in Karnataka. I know many of them person in our party. Even today, slowly they tell, "मैं वहाँ से आया, मैं वहाँ से आया." We have a chief minister who tells in private that मैं वहाँ से आने वाला. We have our MP, we have MLA, but in a corner of their mind, even today they feel that हम तो वहाँ से आए हुए लोग हैं. कितने साल तक ऐसे ही कहना, हम यहाँ के हैं बताने के लिए एक मौका दिया सरकार ने, a one time arrangement. We came from there, we came from there, we came from there. Yes, it is the truth. But somewhere down the line, they have to be accepted telling that you are Indian. The government through this act is only providing a dignity of life, a legal status as citizen. Nothing else we are going to give. Nothing else we are going to give. Who are the people who came here? Very ordinary people. They didn't come here out of aspirations. They didn't come here to fulfill their ambitions. No. A person like Jogesh Mandal, thanks to the agitation, even a person like me also who had to know such detail, I wouldn't have learnt about Jogesh Mandal if not for this Shaheen Bagh, or if not for Nizamabad, or if not for JNU, we wouldn't have learnt it. There are two advantages of all this that is happening, the narrative that is happening across the country. One, right across the country, even the last person now knows kya CAA hai. If not the Citizenship Amendment Act, he knows what this is. If there was no agitation, then people would not have learned about it. The second one is, wherever you go, if you want 10 national flags, you won't get it. You won't get it. At any place of the country, if you want 10 national flags at a time, you won't get it. And forget this Khadi one, the original Khadi one. You won't get it at all. During January 26, in no part of the country that Khadi national flags were available. Because everybody is supporting against, everybody, even in masjid, temple, everywhere. Now there is on January 26. We didn't even know in Kerala, all masjids, they hoisted national flag on January 26th. This all, in all churches also, they let them do it. We are not bothered. We are not against it. But these are the two advantages that we had because of these agitations. So people who were persecuted there, they came here not out of aspiration, not out of ambition. They came here in search of living, a dignity of life. Dignity of life. I have a Kannada book which I will show it at the end. You can see the narratives that are there. When we started preparing the book, we told to many local languages where there are people from Bangladesh who have come there also. In many languages, these narratives have been produced, it has been published in the form of a book. They came here in very bad condition. In very bad condition. And today it has been 30, 40 years since then they have come to this country. Now, naturally, they have become the citizens of this country. We are only making it legally. We are only making it legal. Who were they who came here? We have been told the country, a narrative is going on across the country telling that this act is anti-Dalit. This act is anti-Dalit. People from many walks of life, they also believe that this is an anti-Dalit. How come it can be? To a rough estimate, which will be known only after registration, which can be, the truth will be known only after the registration. 68% of the people who will be accorded citizenship under this act are Dalits. They may be Ods or Meghwalis or some other communities, Valmikis, in the western part of this country. Or they may be Matuvas or Namashudras or some other community in the eastern part of this country. According to a rough estimate, it is a 68%. A government estimate, a social estimate, an organizational estimate. We feel that some 68% of who have come here, who will be accorded citizenship according to this act, they are Dalits. How can this be anti-Dalit? But a narrative is being set, and it carries some weight also, because many important people also, they keep on repeating the same, telling that it is an anti-Dalit. And at the same time, many people are telling that it will harm the interest of the Indian Muslims. No, it will not harm the interest of Indian Muslims. Nowhere it has been told, because it cannot take away the citizenship of any person who has been born in this country. It can never be taken away. But a false narrative has been set across the country, telling that it is anti-Dalit. Number two, it is anti-poor. Number three, it is anti-Muslim. All three which are wrong. Today, the people who are on the streets, if you go and question them, if you go and talk to them informally, if you go and ask them some question, out of 10 persons, 9 persons cannot give a conclusive answer to any of your questions about the act. Any of your questions about the act. And why it is being made done? Because of the way the politics runs in this country. Because of the way social movements run in this country. The politics in this country and the social movement in this country, they doesn't have logic at all. They doesn't have logic at all. It is not for a social cause a movement is being built up. Because of the bread and butter issues of some person, the movements, many of the movements are built up. Because of the bread and butter issues of some people, the movements are built up. And we are seeing this today. The persons who made these people to sit on the streets, they are not there on the streets. They are enjoying their life. I don't want to name many people. On December 30th, they were there here lending their voice to the Shaheen Bagh protesters. But on January 1st, they had posted their photos in Paris. They had posted their photos in Paris. And these ladies who were sitting on the street there, they were shivering there in their coat. But their mentors, their organizers, some of their organizers, I am not telling everybody, some of their organizers, some of their mentors, they were there in Paris enjoying the whatever New Year celebration they had been there. They have been there. Who are on the street now? Number one, a cross section of Congress leaders, not even any mainstream leaders, because Manishankar Iyer, Digvijay Singh, Uman Chandi, they are not being called as mainstream Congress leaders now. So to come to the main street, this has been an effort for them to often give one visit to the strike sites. This is number one. A section of the Muslim society, not all Muslims. There are hundreds of Muslims whom I have talked over a period of 45 days, who know exactly what Citizenship Amendment Act means. Exactly what does it mean. A misled section of the Muslim society. Number three, the ultra-leftist. Not even left now, the ultra-leftist. Now, as the Delhi elections are coming near, slowly the things have started coming on the social media and media. नहीं, ये तो गलत हो रहा है, इसको हम बाहर उठना है. People, the names which are well known to this section of the society and the organization, people who are well known, they have started telling that no, हम ऊपर उठना है. We have to get up, otherwise the cause will get harmed. But this has moved beyond their hands also. It is not in their hands also. It is not even left. It is the ultra left that are operating beyond the screen and on the streets there, lending their voices, their intellect and creativity to this so-called movement. So here we stand after 45 days, where a normal process of giving identity to a section of the society who can only come to India, who don't have any other country to go, if they have to, like it is like Jews, if they have to live a life with their belief, then it had to be either an inclusive society or Israel. It is only two options. They can live inside an inclusive society or they can live in Israel. These are the only two options. In the same way, for Hindus also it is the only two options. Either they can live in an inclusive society anywhere if it is there, or they have to come back to India. It is only an act which gives citizenship to such people who are not allowed to practice their religion there. We have hundreds of examples. Even after the bill was brought, even after the act was announced, even then also, even day before yesterday, a Sikh girl, she was pulled up from the marriage pandal and she was taken away. From the marriage pandal, not from some any other occasion. From a marriage pandal, she was picked up. In few more minutes, she had to tie knot with a person of Sikh origin, but she was taken away in Pakistan. Even when we are talking, and there is persecution in Bangladesh. there is persecution in Afghanistan, where they have to go? They have to come to here. It is a natural home for them. It is not a choice, it is a natural home for them. But whereas there is a question, why you are not allowing Bangladeshi Muslims? Why you are not allowing Ahmadiyas? Why you are not allowing Rohingya? Yes, if they had come in normal way, they would also have been allowed. But Rohingya, we have a very simple question. If you look at the map, if you look at the geography, they can easily go to China. They can easily go to China. They are not allowed there. If China is not allowing, why should India allow? If they have to come to India, it cannot that they can't come directly to India. They have to travel around 2000 kilometers. They have to go to Bangladesh and then they have to come to India. Why can't they get settled in Bangladesh? If they are persecuted because they are Muslims in Myanmar, which, okay, we'll accept. We don't know what is the truth there in the Rakhine areas. We don't know what is the truth there. Well, for a matter of discussion, let us accept that they have been persecuted as Muslims. Why they are not going to China? Why only India? And before coming to India, they have to travel via Bangladesh. Why the Bangladesh society is not accepting them? Ahmadiyas, by belief, they are Islamic. It is a subsect of Islam. Why they are being persecuted in Pakistan? It is a Islamic Republic of Pakistan. India is not a Hindu Republic of Bharat. We are not Hindu Republic of Bharat by constitution. It is an Islamic Republic of Pakistan. It is an Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. It is Islamic Republic of Bangladesh. They are their official religions. They are their official religion. Then why they are being pushed to India? They are not coming to India. They are being pushed on. Why? For nefarious designs. To alter the demography in a particular manner, not in a natural manner. In a natural manner it becomes, then it is not altering. It is not altering. We don't use the word called altering. But by altering the demography of a particular section, particular areas of India, are there some nefarious design? Yes, it is there. So only this act has come. So only there is a particular naming of 6 religions who are minorities in those countries. Who are minorities in those countries. So a legally tenable, a culturally acceptable, historically duty-bound law. This is legally tenable because Indian Parliament has got the right to decide who will be the domicile of this country. It has got the right to decide. And from time to time, it is not a one time, from time to time. In 1971, after the war, Indira Gandhi wrote a note. There is her signature there. You can accord citizenship to people who have come from Bangladesh at that point of time. There were no Muslims, there were only Hindus at that time. To those people who have come from Bangladesh, over a period of time, looking at their behavior by future government. She didn't tell, don't give one. By future government, looking at their behavior, you can accord citizenship. Congress has accepted it. Their own Prime Minister has written a note. People from Uganda, when they were persecuted as Indians, then there was no real question of religion. There were some few dozens of Muslims also who came from Uganda. India has accepted it. But here, it is not the case of Muslim. It is the case of other people. People of other faith. So time and again, we have seen to it that the citizenship laws are amended by Act of Parliament so that we can accord citizenship to people who come to this country for various reasons. In 2004, Atalji's government gave power to 4 districts from Gujarat and Rajasthan to accord to citizenship to the people who had come during war, 1965 war. In 2005, the permission was extended by the Manmohan Singh government for a period of 1 year. The Prime Minister was Manmohan Singh. The government was UPA. Sonia Gandhi was the chairperson. All these people are opposing now. But it was extended for a year. The original act was by Atalji's government. But the extension was by Manmohan Singh government. And there is a speech by Manmohan Singh where he tells that, yes, we have to give one. They had to tell because they put up a photo of Mahatma Gandhi ji, who had told in 1947 September around 26 or 27 that if at all the minorities, Hindus and Sikhs. He has particularly mentioned the name of Hindus and Sikhs. If their life is in danger, if their culture is in danger, if their way of worship is in danger, then they have to be given a life of dignity inside this country whenever they come to India. Whenever they come to India. Since they put up Mahatma Gandhi's photo, they had to accept this act also. So they extended it by an year, and in 2006 they extended it by 2 years again. Because there was a necessity, they extended it by 2 more years. And now the Congress opposes it. How can they oppose? Because their own standing committee chairman Pranab Mukherjee, he has written very much in detail to accord citizenship. In 2003, he was the chairman of the standing committee, which is available on all platforms. He himself has written a note and signed that they have to be accorded the citizenship. And their own chief minister, both Tarun Gogoi and Ashok Gehlot, who is one of whom is the chief minister now, and the other who was chief minister multiple times during election time. In our country, there are two problem points for a healthy discussion and for a healthy movement. One is the year when the census approaches. When the census approaches, suddenly every cross section of the society will prop up some leader who will start asking for minority tag. Suddenly. Now, because of CAA, now it is little subdued. And once the CAA cloud gets cleared, there will be a lot of people who want minority status. Suddenly, why? Don't get curiosity. Just remember that census is approaching. The other second problem point in our country for all movements, all narratives is elections. If you start looking at some Agarwal Sammelan, Jat Sammelan, Dalit Sammelan, continuously start observing when you travel around Delhi, then you come to a decision that elections have approached. Elections have. These are all not natural seekers of identity. These are all not a process of natural seekers of identity. These are all cooked up things. So, in the same way, when the demography was trying to be altered by a design, then there was no question of accepting. As a responsible political party, which believes that politics is there for solution, not for creation of problems. Right from the days when we have come to power in various parts of the country, we believe that it is the fundamental work of a politician to untie the knots, not to create more knots in the administration or in the society or in the daily living. It is our job to untie the knots. That is the principal duty of a politician, principal duty of an administrator, and principal duty of a political party. On that platform of responsibility, on that notion of responsibility, right from Atalji's days or right from days when we were in power in the state, if you want examples, I can quote multiple examples. Since I come from Karnataka, immediately I can quote examples that there was an issue called Tiruvalluvar statue issue in Karnataka. Tiruvalluvar is a great saint from Tamil Nadu. There was a statue built in his memory by Tamil Sangam of that particular locality for 17 long years. Like the JNU's Vivekananda statue, for 17 long years. Here it is yet to, it has not reached 17 years. There it was 17 long years. For 17 long years, Tiruvalluvar statue was wrapped up in a tarpaulin, telling that no, it will bring Kannadigas and Tamilian animosity. There used to be some agitation to take away that rap, Tiruvalluvar Jayanti, Kannada Rajyotsava, some Kannada organization, some Tamil organization. Some 17 long years, it was a flashpoint of problem. But Bharatiya Janata Party government came there, Yediyurappa became the chief minister within 3 months. I am telling you, not after 5 years. Within 3 months, within first 19 days, he called up Karunanidhi, who was the chief minister in Tamil Nadu, went there, met him, asked for him for cooperation. Both of them came to Bangalore. They unveiled the statue of Tiruvalluvar. In the next day, they went to Tamil Nadu. There in Arivalayam Namka, there is a locality called Arivalayam in Chennai. There was a small Sarvajna statue there. That was also covered by a tarpaulin because of Tiruvalluvar controversy. So they, very next day, they went to Chennai. There they held a celebration program where the Sarvajna statue was unveiled. No, there is no flashpoint at all. No agitation, no burn, no stone throwing, nothing. So this is the work of a politician. This is the duty of a politician to untie the knots. There will always be knots. Not gets created. It is not that. Naturally not gets created. So it is your job. If you are an organizer, if you are an administrator, if you are a politician, it is your job to untie it. So as we got the mandate, a bigger mandate in 2019, we got a bigger mandate in 2019. It was our duty to see to it that the small problems which are hindering the progress of this country, to solve them. Today, 1,615 Bodo militants, they have surrendered in Assam. 1,615 Bodos, they have surrendered, militants have surrendered in Assam. 3 days back, a tripartite agreement was signed between the government of India led by Amit Shah, government of Assam led by Sarbanand Sonowal, and the Bodo militant with four Bodo groups. And they signed an agreement to lay down the arm, come to the mainstream. A 1,005 crore package was announced for the development of their particular region. Now Assam officially doesn't have any extremist organization. There may be some other groups. I am not telling it will be 100% peaceful. Human society can never be 100% peaceful. But at least there are no official terrorist organization in Assam as of today. There was a crisis called Bru-Riang crisis, which was lurking for last 27 years. The problem was 125 years old, but the crisis was 27 years old. Driven away by Mizoram Christian Association people, and the problem because of the crisis, agrarian crisis that had developed during that time, more than 35,000 Bru-Riang, they had fled to Tripura. They were refugees in their own country. Like Kashmiri Pandits, they were refugees in their own country. For 27 long years, they were living under the tarpaulin, under the plastic sheet, with the meager ration that the central government was providing to them. Around 15 days back, there was a four-way agreement that was signed by the Tripura government, number 1, the central government, number 2, Mizoram government, number 3, and the Bru-Riang, number 4. The terms of reference of the agreement also. It is very interesting, the terms of the agreement also. Number 1, they will be given land in Tripura by the Tripura government for construction of the houses, number 1. They will be given a subsidy of 1.5 lakh rupees for construction of houses by the central government. Number 3, if they wish to sell their land in Mizoram, from there where they had fled to Tripura, if they wish to sell their land in Mizoram, the government of Mizoram will stand guarantee for their land for getting market rates. If they don't get market rate, then it is the job of the government of Mizoram to provide them the market rate. Number 4, the central government for the next 2 years till they build their house and find their living, it will be providing them with 25 kgs of ration and 5,000 rupees of monthly allowance per family hand. Once for all, the Bru-Riang crisis that were there for 27 long years, once for all it has been solved. Yeah, the Ram Janmabhoomi case was there in Supreme Court. Government didn't have any role, accepted. But government had to translate 27,000 pages of documents in various languages to English. Yogi ji government gave money to it, gave manpower to it. They translated within a period of 3.5 months. This could have been done 10 years ago also. The judgment was not in our hands. It was a legal problem. But there were some measures which the government had to do as far as Ram Janmabhoomi crisis was concerned, that issue was concerned. All those things in the central and the state government, they could do it, they could complete it. The judgment also came. No, there is no problem, Ram Janmabhoomi problem. Many people are happy, some people are unhappy. But the problem is whether you are happy or unhappy, the problem, crisis is not there today. The Article 370, which gave rise to the exodus of Kashmiri Pandits in 1,025 years back, quarter of a century back, which gave rise to the extremism of such proportion, such magnitude in Kashmir, today 370 is not there. Our 36 ministers, they visited the valley, 7 of them to the Kashmir valley. In the second phase, from 6th of February, everybody will be going to the Kashmir valley. There were many criticisms. Out of 36, only 6 visited valley, and 7 visited valley, and 29 visited Jammu. This is January. This is January. They don't even understand. They understand it. They don't want to understand it. Once winter comes down a little, from February 6th, more ministers will be going to the valley. It is because of the climate. First they went to Jammu, and in second round they will be going to Kashmir. Now the ministers can travel freely. The Gulmarg hotels are booked beyond capacity. Beyond capacity. I saw the hotel associations communicate. Don't come to Gulmarg because our hotels are booked more than capacity. Even in some of the general areas also, they have put up some amenities so that families can stay. That was the condition in Gulmarg. So once the Article 370 has been abrogated, now things are becoming normal in Kashmir. It will take more time because there was more complications there. The society itself was more complicated there. So to untie that knot, it takes more time. But the process of untying those knots has started there. It is the job of a responsible government over a period of time to see that such things which are hindering the normal living of a person, citizen of this country, and which is hindering the progress of this country, that has to be solved is the principal duty of a government. We are committed to solving all these. For how many long years there had to be Kaveri dispute? For how many long years there had to be Chandigarh issue? For how many long years there had to be Sutlej issue? For how many long years there had to be Belgaum issue? For how many long years there had to be Krishna issue? For how many long years Kalsa Banduri issue should be there? These have been lurking for political reasons. For political reasons. This government, in the form of CAA, has shown its resolve that we will bite the bullet. We will bite the bullet. What is the purpose? To correct the historical mistakes, historical blunders. What is the motive? To give respectable living to a section of the society which doesn't have any other place across the world to go on. It is their natural home. The CAA exhibits our resolve to govern this country in a healthy manner so that the country also progresses at the pace which the country deserves. Now the pace of our growth or the pace of our progress is not what we deserve. It is not that what we deserve. But we are held back. Not because of the bad economy that is being propagated, but because of all these problems. All these problems. Our energy, our intellect, our whatever the creativity that we have got, it is being expended in all such things, unnecessary things. CAA is one big step in seeing to it that society becomes normal over a period of time, so that the energy that is there in the intellect that is there in the society, it can be used for some other healthy purposes, some other positive work that the society and the country demands. I think the cloud that is being spread over the horizons of the country in the name of protest against CAA in various legislatures, in various cities across the country, and in various universities, in the name that it is discriminatory, it is divisive. This is meaningless. Slowly the people are understanding it. Not only Hindus, even the Muslims are also understanding it. And the very persons who are creating this narrative, they also know that their narratives are hollowed. So they will not accept it because they can't accept the defeat. But they will backtrack. And that backtracking has started. That backtracking has started. We are sensing that backtracking. This is before any matchstick or any candle, before it extinguishes, it has to glow a little more in a bigger manner. This is the last phase of that agitation that is happening. And I will tell you for sure, I have seen various agitations like this. I can quote examples also. After it, there will be no agitation. After it, there will be no, whatever may be the result of Delhi election, after it, there will be no agitation. And they may vacate before also, if the whatever is coming on the social media, if it is their real feeling, then they may vacate before also. Because such agitation, such narrative, they don't have any strength of truth in it. They don't have the strength of truth in it. They are created to substantiate their nefarious reason, whatever it is there. It is for us, the people who are sitting here, to put across the correct narrative that is there behind this, the kind of logic that the government, the society, and the administration it has when it presents this act, and the historical necessity of bringing this act on. It is not because it was there in our manifesto. It was there in BJP manifesto because it was the call of the society. The society wanted it, the culture wanted it, the whole country, it wanted it, so it was reflected in the manifesto, and so it was fulfilled after the elections when we got the mandate. The Citizenship Amendment Act, it is a widely discussed subject, so I don't want to elaborate more on that subject so that we can have more time for discussion. Some of the points that may not be there in the public domain, I have tried to place it in front of you, that this is legally tenable, and we have fulfilled our historical, cultural, civilizational and constitutional obligation by bringing up this CAA. People who are opposing this also, they also know that this is the fulfillment of an obligation a society has toward the individuals of that particular country. They also know that, but for their own reasons they are opposing it, and we should see that the correct perspective, it goes to the individuals. There is no need that you have to propagate the correct picture through the media or whatever it is, mass things, and it has to reach to the individuals. We are doing it for a period of time. I think it will also get settled. Once the rules are announced and the registration starts, this protest will also fizzle out. And it is any time now, within next a week or so, the rules will be announced, and after that, around 15 days hence from there, the registrations will start. Once the registration start, the attention will shift towards registration. How many people are there? And so once the registration starts, I think this agitation and this narrative will also end, and that is the thing that is there in the country now. And I just want to present in front of you that the CAA, this is not the last thing. There may be something Hindu and Muslim in CAA, and we are bent upon solving all the problems that are holding this country back in the path of progress. There is no Hindu Muslim in Kaveri, but we are attempting to solve it. There is no Hindu Muslim in Belgaum, some problem, we want to solve it. There is no Hindu Muslim in Satluj issue, we want to solve it, because that is holding back the progress of this country. To unleash the natural talent or the natural strength of this country, these problems have to be untied. They have to be solved. Only then the country will progress in whatever they. And when I tell progress, it's not only the economical land, it is 360-degree progress. Only the country, then it can experience the real threshold strength of the whole society. The government is hell-bent upon seeing to it that it will happen, and this is one major step in that direction. With this, I will end my few words, and I will leave it to the audience for either question and answer.